You'll see this when life breaks you. And listen, I don't mean the kind of break where you drop your phone and the screen cracks. I'm talking about the break where your plans fall apart, your strength runs out, and you're standing there wondering if you've got anything left. That kind of break. When life breaks you, it reveals the real you, the version that exists beyond masks, excuses, and expectations. When everything is stripped away and you're left standing in the silence of what you thought you knew, that's when the layers you've been hiding behind start to fall. We spend so much of our lives building these shields, these identities that make sense to the world around us. We're the person people expect us to be at work. We're the person our friends want us to be. We're the person our family has always assumed us to be. And while some of that is genuine, a lot of it is performance, a lot of it is survival, a lot of it is a mask. Life, in its breaking moments, tears through those illusions, and what is left is the rawest, most vulnerable version of you, the one you often avoid even looking at in the mirror. When life breaks you, excuses stop working. All those little reasons you gave yourself for why you can't, why you shouldn't, why it's too much or too late, they fall apart when you're staring at rock bottom. Excuses are fragile things, and breaking strips them down until there's nothing to lean on. And that's when you see yourself for who you really are. Not in the moments when you're winning, not when you're comfortable, but when you've lost, when it's dark, when there's no applause and no one's watching. That's the you that life is revealing, because that's the only you who can carry the weight of what comes next, and it's uncomfortable, painfully uncomfortable, because for the first time, you're not able to pretend. You can't cover it up with business or noise or smiles that hide the pain. You can't explain it away with polished words. When life breaks you, silence becomes louder than anything else, and in that silence, the truth shows itself. You find out what you really believe about yourself. You find out whether the confidence you displayed was real or just a facade. You find out whether your faith, your courage, your patience were just nice words or something you actually built inside you. Life doesn't break you to destroy you. It breaks you to introduce you to yourself. Think about it. How often do we spend years chasing things that don't actually belong to us? Chasing approval, chasing validation, chasing a version of success that everyone else claps for but deep down doesn't feel like home. We put on masks every single day because we think that's what's required to be accepted. But when life breaks you, when it takes the job, the relationship, the comfort, the structure you've been standing on, you're left without the disguise. And that's terrifying, because if you've spent years building your worth on what other people see, you suddenly feel like nothing. But what you're actually looking at is your truest foundation, the self that exists when everything else is gone. That's the real you, the one you can rebuild with, the one that doesn't need masks, doesn't need approval, doesn't need applause. It's in those breaking moments you realize how much of your life was driven by fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. And when the break comes, when everything crumbles anyway, you see that those fears never saved you. They only kept you small. They only kept you hidden. They only kept you tied to a version of yourself that wasn't sustainable. Life breaking you is like life calling your bluff, stripping away everything false so the truth has a chance to breathe. And that truth is often more resilient than you ever gave it credit for. You may feel fragile in that moment, but the reality is your most authentic self can survive things your false self never could. The real you doesn't need perfection to keep going. The real you doesn't collapse under failure, because failure becomes information, not identity. The real you doesn't get paralyzed by other people's opinions, because the real you knows that value doesn't come from applause. And none of that shows up when everything's going right. It only shows up when life breaks you, when you're too tired to fake it, when you're too broken to pretend, when you have no choice but to be honest with yourself. That's the version of you that steps forward. And even though it feels weak, it's the strongest part of you, because it's real. Sometimes the breaking shows you that the things you thought defined you were never really yours. That relationship you thought gave you worth, that title you thought made you powerful, that plan you thought was the only way forward. When those things get ripped away, you think you're losing yourself, but you're actually losing what was never you to begin with. The breaking shows you that your identity isn't tied to those external things. And once you see that, Once you realize you're still here without them, you discover a freedom you couldn't have known any other way. That's when you meet yourself, and it's humbling, but it's also liberating when life breaks you. It puts a mirror in front of you that you can't turn away from. And in that mirror, you'll see all the flaws, all the weaknesses, all the fears, but you'll also see the resilience, the courage, the small sparks of strength you didn't know were there. And if you lean into that, if you choose to stay with that reflection instead of running from it, you start to rebuild not with masks, but with truth. You start to create a life not based on pretending, but on being. You stop pouring energy into who you think you should be and start pouring it into who you actually are. That's the gift inside the breaking. It's painful, it's messy, but it's the only way to truly meet yourself. Breaking is not the end. It's the beginning of rebuilding into someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient. When everything falls apart, it feels final. It feels like you've reached the point of no return. But the truth is that breaking moment is not a finish line. It's the ground zero of who you're about to become. It's where the foundation shifts. It's where your perspective changes. It's where the version of you that thought it couldn't go any further gets introduced to the version of you that can. Life has a way of convincing us that struggle is proof of failure, but what it's really doing is planting the seeds for transformation that couldn't happen any other way. Breaking forces you to stop living in autopilot. Up until the moment of collapse, you might have been moving through life, repeating routines, following expectations, staying comfortable in patterns that didn't serve you but were familiar enough to keep you still. Then breaking comes, and it shatters that illusion of safety. It shows you how fragile the things you thought were permanent really are, and it demands that you either stay down or get up with a new way of thinking. That's why it's the beginning, because breaking pushes you into change, and without that force, many of us would keep pretending, keep avoiding, keep hiding. The pain of being broken is also the invitation to build with intention this time, and in that process, you discover strength in places you never thought to look. Before the breaking, you leaned on what was convenient, what was external, what was temporary. Maybe it was people's validation, maybe it was a position, maybe it was a relationship, maybe it was a certain plan. But once those things are gone, you have to draw strength from within, and that's where resilience is born. Real resilience isn't about never falling apart, it's about finding out that falling apart doesn't end you. It's about realizing that every setback carves out space inside you for more endurance, more wisdom, more depth. What feels like ruin at first is actually the construction site for who you're meant to be. Wisdom grows in the cracks of the breaking. You don't get wisdom from things going your way all the time. You don't get it from smooth paths and easy victories. Wisdom comes from loss, from failure, from disappointment, from trying again after everything has fallen apart. It comes from realizing what matters and what doesn't when you no longer have the luxury of pretending. Breaking strips away the noise so that you can hear the lessons life has been trying to teach you all along. It's the wisdom of patience, because you learn that healing takes time. It's the wisdom of gratitude, because you realize the smallest steps forward are still progress. It's the wisdom of humility, because you discover that you can't control everything, but you can always choose how to respond. The process of rebuilding isn't about returning to the way things used to be. That's the mistake many people make, trying to force life back into an old shape, clinging to what was instead of stepping into what could be. Breaking doesn't give you back the past. It clears space for something new. You don't heal by becoming who you were before. You heal by allowing yourself to grow into someone you've never been. That's where the strength comes from, not in reassembling the same fragile pieces, but in crafting something sturdier, something more authentic, something that can hold up under the weight of reality. It's not about restoration. It's about transformation, and resilience is built every time you choose to stand back up. It's not a one-time decision. It's a daily one. Some mornings you'll wake up and the heaviness will still be there, but resilience whispers that you can still move. Some nights you'll wonder if the pain will ever go away, but resilience reminds you that survival itself is proof of progress. Each act of getting up, each act of trying again, each act of refusing to stay broken adds another layer to your strength. Over time, what was once unbearable becomes the foundation of a new endurance, and that endurance becomes part of who you are. Breaking opens the door, but rebuilding writes the story. There is also a deeper resilience that comes from accepting imperfection. When you're broken, you realize you can't control every outcome. You can't force every situation to work in your favor. And that acceptance is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the freedom to let go of what you can't change so you can focus on what you can. That's when you stop wasting energy on blame, on regret, on what ifs, and you start investing it into small steps that actually build momentum. You become wiser not because you avoided pain, but because you survived it and chose to grow through it. And that kind of resilience isn't shaken easily because it's built on experience, not illusion, strength, wisdom. And resilience born out of breaking have a depth that nothing else can give. They're not surface level qualities. They're not traits you can fake. They're etched into you through the nights you thought you wouldn't make it and did, through the moments you thought you couldn't breathe, but found a way to keep going, through the seasons when everything looked lost and yet somehow you kept moving forward. Those are the moments that shape you into someone new, someone who carries both the scars and the strength, someone who understands the cost of growth but chooses it anyway. Breaking is the starting point, but what comes after is the true story, the one where you build a self that can't be shaken the same way again.